Coming up on the Empowered Woman podcast.
I just started to realize that the key piece is the trigger. And the trigger is a beautiful thing because it shows you where you still need to heal. It tells you that while you're dealing with a present situation that might be triggering, the trigger is really that iceberg. It's just the tip of the iceberg.
Welcome to the Empowered Woman podcast, the #1 show on visibility strategies for women entrepreneurs. If you want to get empowered to be seen, stand out on social media, stages, TV, and more to make an impact with your voice and business, you're in the right place. I'm so glad that you're here. My name is Marcia Spurk, and I'm your host, professional singer and visibility strategist. Welcome again, and let's dive into today's episode.
Burnout doesn't just exhaust you, it silently erodes your most important relationships. Aurora Method Coaching helps high-achieving women uncover the root beliefs driving their relationship conflicts and burnout and move from emotional reactivity to calm, clarity, and confidence. Ready to restore connection? Book your free consultation at meetwithtracy.coach.
Hi, Miranda. Thank you so much for joining me today.
Yeah, you're welcome. This is exciting. I'm happy to be here.
Yes. Well, why don't you kick us off and tell us who you are and what you do?
Awesome. Thank you. Well, my name is Miranda Rocca-Circelli. I've been in leadership for almost 20 years, not by choice. I've been a founder of different businesses, but I started in education, transferring people from face-to-face and trying to get them into the non-conventional online. This was like 20 years ago. And then just where life took me, I had kids. I have 3 children. My oldest is going to university now. So in that process, I think that's when I just started to question my life, question my purpose, tied to the identity of being a mother and realizing, that's a hat you wear. And then just starting to question trauma and better understand, now I have these children and I realized I wanted to create this great relationship with them. And I didn't have the knowledge or the experience or the past experience of having that great parental relationship. So I just started questioning things, and through that process of identifying I had unresolved trauma was kind of the Pandora's box of, okay, now I've recognized I'm carrying trauma, and before I pour that into my children's cup, I need to now find out, how do I heal this? How do I better myself? How do I become a different version? How do I remember who I actually am? And that was almost 20 years ago, and so I was able to start to create curriculum out of my pain, became other people's gain, which motivated me too, where it's like, yeah, you got to do the deep, dark shadow work, because what comes out of that is I'm going to be able to help other people navigate in their journeys. And so I now develop leadership programs. I've published a book. I work as a corporate coach, helping to shift cultures in organizations wholesomely. And my whole thing is, I'm here to provide tools and support people, but they shouldn't need me. It's not the best business model, but it's kind of like my parenting, where you should be so empowered that I'm here to support you, but you don't need me. You can go out in the world and you have everything you need to be able to consciously heal and be empowered. So that's kind of my methodology is support people and give them everything so that they can go out and fish and provide.
I love that. It's creating independence, not codependency, right?
Right. And I find that's often a business model in different, healing modalities, is that they create almost like a trauma bond with their clients, where their clients now depend on them. And I don't want people to depend on me. Sure, there's a part of your ego that loves that, but ultimately, like, I want people to be so empowered that they're going out now and they're sharing the work that they're doing on themselves to help others. And it's just that paying forward piece, right? I don't want people to rely on me. I have children. I don't need anyone else to rely, right? But I just also have seen, and even for myself, to just be in situations where you're triggered, but you're able to navigate that consciously on your own. That's empowerment.
Absolutely. Well, I'm curious to hear more about the business journey. I obviously want to talk about your methodology and the book, but tell us about, the transition into, okay, I'm doing this and I'm going to start serving my first few clients. That beginning can be a little daunting. How did that go for you?
I mean, when you say beginning, it's interesting because I think through life, the ebb and flow, right? Like every time I had a child, and I have 3, it was a new beginning, right? Because
Right.
I'd have to kind of put things on pause, unfortunately, and then kind of start back. So
Mm.
every time I started back, it was like starting a new relationship, right? And
Yeah.
it's just, it was daunting because I also live in a very northern rural community that's very male dominated. And so that's just the landscape too, because I do have to work a lot harder to get the visibility and the acknowledgement. And as a businesswoman, the challenges, and then you get some momentum, and then it was like, okay, now I gotta be a mom. So now I lost that momentum. So every time those are the hardest years in my life, to be honest. Raising children, raising myself, and raising businesses. And even still, I have moments where, you sit at a table and you get triggered from that past, even whether it's the patriarchy or whatever it was that was challenging for me. Those triggers still come up because I think often, no matter how successful I become as a woman in a certain industry, there's always going to be challenges that I have to go back and almost feel like I'm beginning again, because depending who's sitting at that table. And I think for me, the piece that always got me through was the healing. And that kind of segues into the methodology of, I played with this for years as I started to kind of create these methodologies, and I tried them with myself first before I tried them with anyone else. And I just started to realize that the key piece is the trigger. And the trigger is a beautiful thing because it shows you where you still need to heal. And we often look at triggers as, oh, I'm triggered, like,
Right.
but it's such a beautiful thing because it tells you that while you're dealing with a present situation that might be triggering, the trigger is really that iceberg. It's just the tip of the iceberg. And really those emotions that are being triggered, whether it's anger, whether it's shame or guilt, and it's usually lower emotional states that get triggered. Anything that's positive is known as a glimmer, right? So we've heard that's kind of the other part of it, but the trigger is you're brought to that lower frequency. And I work with lawyers and I tell them, if you're triggered in the courtroom, you're no longer advocating for your client. You're now advocating for yourself, because that is bringing up an unhealed wound from your past.
Yeah.
And if you don't look at it, if you don't bring it to the surface and acknowledge it and work through it, you will continue to suppress it. And eventually that energy harnesses into disease and illness. And so a lot of my work is also based on the work of Dr. David Hawkins, the map of consciousness, where he quantifies emotional states. So it's now no longer this, ambiguous thing that no one, oh, they're just feelings. And no, they actually have an energetic frequency associated to them. So now you're talking about energy, which can't be created or destroyed, right? It can only be transferred. So you can ignore your emotions all you want, but you can't, because it's energy and it's got to go somewhere. So if you're going to keep that and suppress it, it will eventually do harm. So how do you then, and the biggest question I always get with people is when I get to the place where I tell them, like, you have to identify your emotional state and sit with that emotion. That is the one thing that we've lost touch as humans. People don't, they're like, okay, well, wait a second, Miranda, how do you sit with your emotion? Like, what's the trick? And I'm like, literally, you feel your emotion. If you're angry, create a safe space and feel your anger. If you're feeling guilt and sadness, create a space and sit with that guilt and sadness till you can't feel it anymore, right? And that is the hardest concept for humans to understand, is that it's nothing fancy. You literally just feel what you need to feel. And we've lost such touch with our emotional self that it's easier for people to suppress, which then leads to oppression. Like, there's a whole, escalation of that, right? But that's where we're at as humans, is like, well, that looks too hard. And it is. It's the hardest thing in the world to work on yourself and better yourself. And that's why most people don't do it.
Yeah, absolutely. And I love looking at triggers as an opportunity, not something for you to just stuff away, because it's going to come back anyway. And it's not
Finds
like
its way.
you can protect yourself from the world triggering you. If it's triggering something inside of you, you're going to have to be the one that handles it. Do you find that the people that you work with, they are already sort of aware of their triggers, or they're mostly looking for a specific transformation, and then in the process you uncover the triggers?
A little bit of both. So, like, depending. So when I work with corporate clients, they tend to bring me on to work with their teams, right? So it's often like, people who don't have the awareness, and then I've recognized that one of my skills and talents is to create awareness. And so I have a way of doing that without, obviously if you start wronging and shaming people, that's not awareness. Right? So I was raised by, Italian immigrants, and guilting and wronging and shaming was like, that's how they felt that they could make waves in the world. But ultimately that just keeps someone in that lower state. And so I think often instantly there's awareness that's made. And I've kind of built that skill of assessing where someone's at and matching that energy and not matching it in a condescending way, literally matching it so that we can have a good synergistic conversation. And energetically, then they're more receptive, right? Because the minute someone feels that they need to defend themselves, there's a wall, and it doesn't matter, right? It's like when you say things to your kids versus some random person says something to your kids, and then they come home, they're like, "Oh, someone just said this. It's amazing, isn't it?" And you're like, "I've been saying that for like ever," but and that's the same with any relationship, like if it's your boss or whatever.
Yeah.
So I think there's it's a little bit of both. And so I've been able to adapt, and people who want to work with me one-on-one, which I don't often do, are the ones like you said, like if you're coming to me, you understand there's a distinction between the work I do and the work that, therapists do and the work that counselors do. And they're all precious in their own way. However, I'm here to offer you tools, show you how to use them, and support you anytime you're questioning or we all need a little bit of help. But the whole point is you are going to be empowered to heal yourself.
That's wonderful. I love that. Well, now I want to hear more about the book and the decision. Now is the time to write it and the process, and obviously what's in it and how can people find it.
Hey, let me ask you a question. Would you like to be my next guest on the Empowered Woman podcast? Do you have a story you'd like to share? Want more visibility for your business on a show ranked in the top 0.5% in the world? Well, then head on over to martasburke.com/podcast guest for more information.
Absolutely. And that process where it's like, oh, okay, I need to do this. And you're reading other people's books and you're seeing other people's works and you're like, okay, anyone can do this. I just need to do it. Right. So it started 8 years ago. And it was quite interesting because I started writing the book. I needed a space outside of being a mom. And so the space I went to was my old elementary school that got transferred into condominium. So the parallel there was interesting because the whole idea initially was that I wanted the book to be called something different. And the whole idea was to teach people how to shift their paradigms. Because the truth is, as much as you heal, the storms are still going to be present. People think when you get to there's not going to be any triggers. No, the storms still come, but now you're equipped to navigate them. And then you even get to the place sometimes where you get excited about the storm. Where you're like, you know what, I got this. Like I've got everything I need. And if I don't, I'm just going to learn more and evolve for the next storm. And that's the piece of, I think most people need to understand is just because you heal, it's just like working out. Once you get to your goal weight, doesn't mean you're just going to stop working out or now it's now a lifestyle. Right. And so when I wrote the book and I started it 8 years ago, and it wasn't because it took 8 years to write it. It was really just that opportunity of like, okay, you'd write a little bit. Then I'm like, okay, I want more experiences in this. And so and it really was my own insecurity of thinking that I wasn't good enough to write a book. Right. And so I started writing it. And so the way I structured it is I created the first part, which was my experience and my lived experience and my personal journey, how I got into leadership, all the challenges, all of it. Right. And then the second part was the methodology of like, okay, here is a true tried and tested process. Like here are 6 steps, follow the 6 steps. And even if you just read through them, you already increase your energetic frequency because it's designed in that way. And then the third part was now, like I said, now you have to integrate. Now you have the tools, you know how to use them, and now you're going to start healing. So now your life is going to look different. So how do you now integrate into a different frequency and show up now in this different way? And then I talk about, the challenges, and I even bring in, the societal pieces, and I've gotten into politics. So I use that as a good example of, hey, is this going to contain me, or is this going to allow me to expand if I get into politics, which is like, I think the worst of the worst if you're looking at a lower energetic plane, but unfortunately that is where we can maybe foster some change, but I don't want to lose myself in that process, right? So can I do this and can I weather the storm and come out and expand instead of contract? And so that's kind of the litmus test for me. But But that's the whole premise, is now that we are in this place of heightened frequency, how do we maintain it? And again, people think they go away. No, they don't go away. The triggers become more subtle. They're not as like dramatic, because I find for myself, when you're at the point where you're just discovering you have trauma, humans are addicted to trauma. By virtue, unfortunately. And so something has to be really loud and in your face. Often they say the universe is whispering to you. If you don't hear, eventually it gets so loud that it's like if you need to leave a job and you keep pushing it and eventually you get fired and you're like, well, why did that happen? Well, because you weren't listening. That wasn't a space where your frequency matched anymore. And so I think in this journey, it kind of blends all that together, where it's just teaching people now, your frequency, you're going to lose friends, you're going to lose family, you're going to lose jobs, you're going to lose all these things, because remember, you're now at a different frequency. So you have to now find and create that environment that's going to resonate at your frequency. So there's almost like a grieving process that has to happen too. So I really wanted to make sure that I was giving people my experience so they had something to connect with, a process that they could just take and start practicing, like a formula. And then also the support piece of like, okay, now you're doing it, but don't worry. I'm like, let's support each other. I'm still here. And yeah, you're going to encounter this and that. And there's still going to be storms. There's still going to be challenging people. That doesn't go away. But you have the ability to now navigate this in a healthy way.
Yeah. I love that. Well, thank you for giving us a glimpse inside the book. Tell us the name and how can people find it?
Absolutely. So it's called Triggered to Transcendent, and it's about building, unshakable leadership skills. And it's by mastering your triggers. And you can find it on Amazon. I'll send you the link. And I'm just about finished getting it into Barnes and Nobles and Chapters. So it should be in there in the coming weeks.
That's wonderful. Congratulations.
Thank you.
A labor of love. It's like as they say, birthing a child.
You know what? It is. And it's actually not even that bad. So I now that I've done the process, I'm like, oh, I could write, I'm already starting to write the second book. And you can also find out more on at my website, empoweryouleadership.com too.
I love that. So good. Well, I'm curious, do you have any client stories that come to mind that you'd like to share that have stuck with you, and also to exemplify the process that you were talking about, identifying the triggers and being able to implement and integrate after they work with you?
Absolutely. So, often, which is interesting, so I develop different programs. Sometimes they're 6-month programs, depending. And often the key is people go through my program and I'll hear from them, a year or two later, something will trigger something, they'll reach out to me. And as much as, at first I didn't like that, because I wasn't getting the old clients coming back. And I thought it was kind of like, mother lets the bird fly out and then you never see them again. And I didn't like that. But ultimately, I've learned that is the empowering piece, is that if people feel that they have everything they need to kind of continue on in life and they don't need me, that's actually a compliment for me. So often that happens, but everyone always usually finds a way to connect. The other piece is, like, I work in a lot of conventional industries, so mining, I'm just bridging into the tech industry. And, I've learned how to bring this into every environment, because every environment needs it. Yeah. And again, it's just that tipping point of we're just starting to talk emotions in the workspace. We're just, and we should be. So I also perform workplace investigations. So I see the other end of the spectrum when I come in and everything's kind of a disaster, and you're just like, this is all preventable. This is all human capital, human factor, all of it. We're just not, there's no support to develop your human sides, right? And so that's really important, because I think a lot of the things that happen in workplaces are completely preventable. It's a lot of just people's inner trauma, that they're now in a workspace with people and everyone's just throwing their trauma at each other. Yeah. So I think a lot of that, and often it is preventable, but again, we live in a society that we still are addicted to drama and trauma to a certain degree. So often I also have respected the fact that sometimes my work isn't resonating with certain organizations or where they're at yet. And that took years, because I saw that as rejection when but this is going to help everyone. And they're like, yeah, no, we don't need that. And you're just like, but how could you not? But I've learned it is redirection. But again, that was a wound I had to heal. So often, I'm not someone's first choice, right? Because you don't want to fix the things that you think aren't broken, because then now you've leveled up and now you have to, it's a different lifestyle, right? It's just like when people acquire different, even hard skill training, well, now they have to level up. You have to graduate to the next level, because now your awareness is heightened. But sometimes people don't want to deal with that, because again, more power, more responsibility, right? But I mean, in the end, and that's why I wrote the book. I thought, you know what, at least that way, this is a tool that everyone can keep with them. So even when you're out there on your own, if you need a little reminder or support, you have the book. And so that was kind of my gift to the world of saying, hey, like, you know, when you're ready, here you go, and then we can work together. But ultimately, at least there's something for people, everyone and anyone to hold on to and to use as a tangible resource.
Yes, amazing. And I'll make sure and have the link in the show notes. So if someone's listening and they want to bring you into their organization to have a conversation and learn more about your work, should they just go to your website to schedule the time? How do you usually do that?
Yeah, absolutely. They can go to my website. They can email me, miranda@empoweryouleadership.com. I mean, the website always has all the info, or social media. And it starts with the conversation, because I mean, at the end of the day, I always want to understand people's needs. Of course, I kind of have the tools based on, you know, a majority needs, but it's really important to customize things for everyone's individual needs. So it starts with a conversation, and then I try to keep things as intimate in that regard, of still meeting with my clients and going through the whole process, because again, it's so important to understand what their unique needs are, what cultural needs that they want to shift. And so that's really important. So yeah, so it starts with a call or an email.
Okay, perfect. Well, I love that you use the word empowered in your website and in your business, because that's what I'm all about, obviously. Before I have you share how people can connect with you personally on social media, like you mentioned, and I'll also add that to the show notes. I like asking all of my guests my $1 million question.
Uh-oh.
It is, Miranda, what is an empowered woman to you?
It's interesting. I'm thinking of an earlier meeting I had today. Empowered to me as a woman is, I think, being sovereign, knowing that you are self-governing, that you don't need to rely on anyone to make your decisions, and unapologetic too. I think that's a big piece of being empowered. And as women, I think we historically and systemically have been, you know, we're so polite and kind, like, you know, I'm sorry. And you know, I'm not being polite and kind anymore about taking up space. And I think an empowered woman knows that she can take up whatever space she chooses to, and we have earned the right before any man has. And ultimately, you know, there's actually a chapter in my book about the power of a woman, because I think we were meant to forget how powerful we are, and an empowered woman remembers her power and uses it respectfully and responsibly. But knows that she doesn't need to rely on any patriarchy, on any other systems outside of herself. She has everything within her to do whatever she wants to do on this planet. And I think more women need to remember that we are sovereign. And I think that's the most empowering piece as a woman, is to know that you've got everything you need. You just need to remember who you are, and you just need to tap into those pieces that the world made you forget that you had.
That's amazing. Yes, remember who you are. I love that. Well, tell us, how can people connect with you personally? Do you hang out on LinkedIn or Instagram or?
Absolutely. So I think LinkedIn is at Miranda Rocca. You can also find Empower You Leadership. And on Instagram, I believe I'm Miranda L. Rocca. But if you just Google my name or Empower You Leadership, you will find me.
Wonderful. Well, thank you so much for sharing with us and for sharing your gifts with the world. That's amazing about the book, and make sure people will go check it out. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much. Thank you for having me.
Thanks so much for tuning in today. I hope this episode empowered you. And if you enjoyed the show, please join the Empowered Woman community on Facebook and share with friends, or leave a review on iTunes so more people can discover this empowering message. Until next time, bye.